Have you ever considered the true weight of your words? Not the weight they carry in a conversation or the immediate impact they have on someone's feelings, but their spiritual weight. An invisible gravity that pulls on your soul. A debt recorded in an eternal ledger that we rarely, if ever, think about. We live in a world saturated with words, spoken, typed, and whispered. Most of them vanish into the air, forgotten moments after they are uttered. But what if some of them don't? What if certain words, especially those spoken about others in the shadows, carry a terrible hidden price? A price so high it can follow us beyond the veil of this life. Today, we are not just exploring a spiritual concept. We are opening a direct message, a chilling warning delivered from the other side through a humble Polish nun who became one of the most important mystics of the 20th century. Her name was Saint Faustina Kowalska, the Apostle of Divine Mercy. And what she was shown, what she heard directly from a suffering soul, reveals the shocking cost of a sin we often dismiss as harmless. A sin so common, it's a part of our daily lives. Get ready, because the revelation at the heart of this video is not a metaphor. It's a specific calculation, a spiritual equation that will change the way you think about conversation forever. We will uncover what Saint Faustina learned about the staggering number of years a soul can spend in purgatory, paying the price for the seemingly small sin of gossip. This isn't speculation. This is from her own diary, a direct testimony of a supernatural encounter that the Church has validated. What you are about to hear is a truth that has been waiting in the pages of her sacred journal, ready to be understood in its full, terrifying clarity. Before we delve into the shocking revelation itself, we must first understand the woman who received it. Who was Sister Maria Faustina Kowalska? To the outside world, she was simple, uneducated, performing the most menial tasks in her convent in Poland. She was a gardener, a cook, a porter. There was nothing in her daily life that would suggest she was walking and talking with Jesus, Mary, and the souls from purgatory. Her life was a portrait of humility, a quiet existence dedicated to God. But within the heart of this unassuming nun, a universe of mystical experiences was unfolding. Jesus Christ chose her for a monumental mission, to be the secretary of His divine mercy. He tasked her with spreading the message of His infinite love and mercy to a world that would soon be torn apart by war and darkness. She was not a theologian or a scholar. She was a vessel, chosen precisely for her simplicity and unwavering trust. Her experiences were not vague feelings or ideas. They were direct conversations, vivid visions, and profound spiritual encounters that she was commanded to record. This record is her famous diary, titled Divine Mercy in My Soul. This is not just a book, it is a spiritual treasure chest, a window into the supernatural. Within its pages, we find her intimate dialogues with Jesus, her struggles, her ecstasies, and her chilling glimpses into the afterlife. The Church has studied this diary for decades, scrutinizing every word, and has found it to be a source of authentic divine revelation, a gift for our times. It is from this very diary, from a specific numbered entry, that our warning comes today. Saint Faustina's visions were not limited to the glories of heaven. To teach her the infinite value of a soul and the gravity of sin, she was also given terrifying visions of hell and deeply sobering experiences of purgatory. She didn't just hear about purgatory, she felt its fire. She didn't just learn about the suffering of the souls there, she was permitted to speak with them, to understand their pain, their regret, and the reasons for their purification. She saw firsthand that every action, every word, has a consequence. There are no forgotten deeds, no careless whispers that simply fade away. It was during one of these encounters, a conversation with a soul in the midst of its purification, that she learned the specific cost of idle, harmful words.
She learned that the justice of God is perfect and precise, and that the suffering required to cleanse a soul of the damage done by its tongue is measured, accounted for, and exacted with frightening accuracy. What could be so serious about a seemingly harmless conversation that it would demand such a heavy price? What did this suffering soul reveal to her that left such a profound mark on her own spiritual life?
The answer she received would shake her to her core, and it might just change the way you speak forever. Stay with me as we are about to open her diary to that very page. Let us now turn to the diary entry that holds this powerful secret. It is found in diary entry number 20. But to grasp the full weight of this entry, we must first understand what purgatory is, not as a theological concept, but as the reality Saint Faustina experienced. For her, purgatory was not a distant, abstract idea. It was a place she visited in spirit, a state of being whose suffering she was allowed to witness and even feel. She described it as a place of great longing, a consuming fire of love. The souls there are saved. They are certain of their eventual entry into heaven, but they are not yet pure enough to stand in the presence of a perfectly holy God. The greatest suffering, she wrote, is the intense and painful longing for God. Imagine knowing that your ultimate joy, the very purpose of your existence, is just beyond a veil, but you cannot yet pass through. Every fiber of your being yearns for God, but you are held back by the stains of sin that must be cleansed. This cleansing is often described as a fire, but it's not a fire of destruction. It is a fire of purification, burning away the selfishness, the pride, the attachments, and the unrepented sins of a lifetime. It is the painful final removal of everything that is not of God. Souls from purgatory frequently appeared to St. Faustina, begging her for prayers. They would appear in her cell at night, their forms often showing the signs of their suffering. They were not ghosts in the way we think of them, but real spiritual beings, our brothers and sisters in Christ, who were in desperate need of help. And they knew she could help them. They asked for her prayers, her sacrifices, and for her to offer Holy Mass for their intentions. She saw with her own eyes how the power of prayer on earth could reach into purgatory and bring immense relief and release to these suffering souls. This is a crucial point. Her mission wasn't just to observe, it was to participate. She was an active intercessor, a bridge between the church on earth and the church suffering in purgatory. This gave her a unique and deeply personal understanding of the consequences of sin. She wasn't just told about it, she saw the receipts. She saw the spiritual bills that had come due after death and the intense purification required to pay them. She learned that God's justice is perfect, but so is His mercy, which provides this state of cleansing rather than eternal loss. Now, let's set the scene for the encounter. It was not in a grand vision or a dramatic apparition. It was in the quiet of her convent life, in that sacred space where the veil between worlds was thin for her. A soul appeared to her. This was not unusual, but this soul's suffering was distinct, and the reason for it was startlingly specific. It was the soul of a religious sister from her own community who had died a short time before. Faustina saw her in a terrible state, engulfed in flames of agony. Struck with pity and a holy fear, Faustina immediately asked the soul the cause of its immense suffering. Why was its purification so severe? The soul's answer was not what one might expect. It had not committed some great scandalous public sin. Its torment did not come from a life of crime or overt rebellion against God. The source of its agonizing, prolonged purification came from something far more subtle, far more common, and far more insidious. A sin that we commit in our living rooms, in our offices, over the phone, and now across the entire internet.
The suffering sister confessed to St. Faustina the reason for her torment. It was the sin of gossip, detraction, speaking ill of others. But it wasn't just the fact of the gossip that was being punished. It was something more. The soul revealed a terrifying spiritual principle. The measure of justice for this sin was directly related to the damage it caused. And it was then, in that moment of chilling revelation, that the soul gave Faustina the specific calculation. It revealed the shocking number of years it had to suffer for what seemed like a minor transgression. What was that number? And what does it mean for us today, in a world where gossip has become a global pastime? We are about to uncover the exact words from the diary.
The tension in that spiritual encounter is palpable, even just reading the words from her diary. The suffering soul, once a companion to Faustina in religious life, now stands before her as a testament to divine justice. Faustina, filled with a mixture of compassion and holy dread, listens as the soul reveals its secret. And here, directly from her diary, is the heart of the revelation. The soul confessed that the greatest torment it was enduring was because of things it had said about another sister. It had gossiped. Then comes the chilling calculation. The soul told St. Faustina that it had already been suffering in this purifying fire for a long time. It explained that the gossip had caused real harm, and that now, in the light of God's truth, it had to make reparation for every single careless word. And for one particular instance of this sin, for a specific round of detraction, the soul revealed it was sentenced to suffer intensely for 7 years. 7 years! For a conversation! Let that number sink in for a moment. Not 7 days or 7 months. 7 years of intense, purifying suffering in purgatory for what we might call a little chat. This wasn't a punishment for a lifetime of gossip, but for a specific instance of it. This is what makes the revelation so utterly shocking. It provides a terrifyingly specific metric for the spiritual cost of our words. It forces us to ask, if one bout of harmful talk costs 7 years, what is the accumulated debt for those who make gossip a regular habit? The spiritual mathematics of this are staggering and should stop every single one of us in our tracks. This is the hidden spiritual law that the world ignores, but that is perfectly active and enforced in the economy of salvation. Why is this sin so grave in the eyes of God? To understand this, we have to look deeper than the words themselves. Gossip is not just about sharing information. At its root, it is a triple sin. First, it is a sin against charity. It violates the great commandment to love our neighbor as ourselves. When we speak ill of someone, we are actively choosing to harm them, to diminish them in the eyes of others, whether we admit it to ourselves or not. We are treating them not as a beloved child of God, but as an object for our own entertainment or self-aggrandizement. Second, it is a sin against justice. A person's reputation, their good name, is one of their most valuable possessions. It can take a lifetime to build and only a moment of gossip to destroy. When we steal someone's reputation, we are committing a form of theft. And unlike stealing money or property, a stolen reputation is almost impossible to give back. The poison of our words spreads from person to person, and we can never fully track it down to retract it. The damage continues to ripple outwards long after we have forgotten the conversation. The soul in purgatory, in a state of perfect justice, is left to repair the damage it can no longer control on earth. And third, it is often a sin against the truth. Gossip rarely stays pure. It becomes embellished, exaggerated. Details are added, contexts are removed. A small truth can be twisted into a monstrous lie that ruins a person's life, their career, their relationships.
We become merchants of falsehood, spreading darkness disguised as information. Saint Faustina understood this immediately. This encounter wasn't just a piece of supernatural trivia for her. It was a life-altering lesson. She writes in her diary that after this vision, she made a firm resolution to never, ever speak ill of her neighbors again. She saw the fire, she heard the sentence, and it changed her forever. But this raises a difficult question, one you might be thinking right now. What if what you're saying is true? Does speaking the truth about someone's faults still count as gossip? Is there a difference between malicious gossip and simply stating a fact? And what about the more subtle forms of this sin that we might not even recognize? The next part of our journey will explore these very questions, revealing the different faces of gossip and how it cleverly hides in our everyday communication. You might be surprised to find out how often we are guilty without even realizing it. The question you are asking is perhaps the most important one in this entire discussion, and it reveals the subtle genius of this sin. What if the negative thing you are saying about someone is actually true? The church has a specific name for this, and it is just as serious as lying.
It is called detraction. While calumny or slander is telling lies to ruin someone's reputation, detraction is revealing a person's hidden faults to someone who has no right to know them. And this is the trap where most of us fall. We justify it by saying, "But it's the truth." We feel a sense of righteousness as if we are merely reporters of fact. But spiritual law operates on a higher plane than human law. In God's eyes, the truth is not a weapon to be used to harm another. A person's faults, their struggles, their past mistakes, these are sacred and private matters between them and God. To needlessly expose those faults is to violate their dignity, to strip them of their good name without just cause. It is a profound act of injustice. Think of it this way. A person's reputation is like their home. Calumny is like setting fire to their house with lies. Everyone can see it's wrong. But detraction is like being invited into their home, seeing that it's messy or that something is broken, and then going out and describing it in detail to the entire neighborhood. You haven't lied, but you have violated a trust. You have taken something private and made it public, causing shame and humiliation. And for that, a price must be paid. The soul who spoke to Saint Faustina was likely suffering for this very sin of detraction. Then there is the even more subtle form of this sin, rash judgment. This is the sin that happens in the silence of our own minds, before a single word is ever spoken. It is when we see someone's action and immediately assign the worst possible motive to it. We see a coworker leave early and think they're lazy and trying to get out of work, when in reality they have a sick child to care for. We see someone dressed a certain way and make a whole series of assumptions about their character. This inner act of condemnation is the seed from which the poisonous tree of gossip grows. In our modern world, these sins have taken on new and more dangerous forms. We practice detraction when we share a negative news story about someone on social media without a second thought. We engage in calumny when we share a rumor or a meme that is designed to humiliate a public figure. We commit rash judgment with every comment section we scroll through, forming instant opinions about strangers based on a single sentence or a profile picture. The speed and reach of the internet have amplified the power of our words to do harm exponentially. A whisper in a Polish convent could damage a reputation within those walls. A single tweet can destroy a reputation globally in minutes. We even disguise our gossip in pious language. "We need to pray for Susan," we say. "I heard she's having marriage problems again." The prayer request becomes a socially acceptable excuse to share juicy details. We masquerade our curiosity as concern. "I'm just worried about John," we say. "He seems so distant. Do you know what's going on with him?" We frame our judgment as a request for advice.
We have become masters at dressing up this sin in 1,000 different costumes. But God is not fooled by the masquerade. He sees the intention of the heart. He sees the pride, the envy, the boredom, or the simple cruelty that fuels our words. So now that we've unmasked this sin and its many disguises, we have to face an even deeper question. Why? Why are we so powerfully drawn to this behavior? If the spiritual cost is so high, why is gossip so irresistible to us? What is the deep spiritual and psychological need that we are trying to satisfy when we talk about others? The answer to this question reveals a profound truth about our own brokenness and our desperate need for God, and that is what we will explore next. To understand why we gossip, we must be brutally honest with ourselves. We have to look past the surface-level excuses and peer into the darker corners of our own hearts. One of the primary drivers of gossip is insecurity. When we feel small, insecure, or insignificant, talking about the faults and failures of others can give us a temporary and false sense of superiority. By pushing someone else down, even just with our words, we create the illusion that we are standing on higher ground. It's a cheap and easy way to feel better about our own lives, our own struggles, and our own secret sins. Instead of doing the hard work of building up our own character, we find it far simpler to tear down someone else.
It's a spiritual shortcut that leads directly to a spiritual dead end. This is a manifestation of the sin of pride. It is the voice of the ego whispering in our ear, "You are better than them. Their mistakes prove your righteousness." But in the kingdom of God, the exact opposite is true. True spiritual greatness is found in humility, in compassion, and in seeing the good in others, not in broadcasting their faults. Another powerful driver is the desire for connection and belonging. Gossip can be a form of social currency. Sharing a secret, a piece of inside information, creates a bond, however toxic, between the gossiper and the listener. It makes us feel like we are part of an exclusive group, in the know. We trade stories about other people's lives to build intimacy with each other. But this is a counterfeit intimacy. It is a connection built not on mutual respect and love, but on a shared act of judgment against a third party. It's a fragile alliance that can shatter in a moment. After all, if someone is willing to gossip with you about others, you can be certain they are willing to gossip about you with others. Boredom also plays a significant role. In a world saturated with entertainment, our own lives can sometimes feel mundane. Talking about the drama, the scandals, and the problems of others is a form of cheap entertainment. Their lives become a soap opera for our consumption. We dissect their choices, speculate on their motives, and pass judgment on their outcomes, all from the safe distance of our own conversation. We use their real-life pain and struggles as a way to pass the time, forgetting that we are speaking about a real person, a soul created and loved by God, with their own burdens and their own cross to carry. And sometimes gossip is driven by something even darker: envy and resentment. When we see someone who has something we want, success, happiness, a good family, a strong faith, and we feel that we don't deserve our own lot in life, gossip becomes a weapon. We use it to cut them down to size, to find a flaw in their character, to tarnish their success. If we can convince ourselves and others that they are not as good as they seem, it somehow soothes the ache of our own envy. This is a poison that rots the soul from the inside out, turning us into bitter critics of the blessings God has given to others. St. Faustina's revelation forces us to see this sin not as a minor social failing, but as a grave spiritual disorder. It is a symptom of a heart that is not rightly ordered toward God and neighbor. It reveals a soul that is seeking validation, connection, and excitement in the wrong places. It shows a fundamental lack of love, a failure to see the face of Christ in the people around us.
The 7-year sentence is not an arbitrary punishment. It is the time required to burn away all of this pride, insecurity, envy, and cruelty. It is the time needed to purify the soul and teach it the one lesson it failed to learn on earth: how to truly love. So, if the cost is so high and the causes are so deep within us, what is the solution? How can we possibly break free from a habit that is so ingrained in our culture and in our own human nature? Is there a practical spiritual strategy we can use to guard our tongues and purify our hearts? The answer is yes, and Saint Faustina, along with other great saints, has given us the roadmap. That is the crucial, hope-filled path we will walk down next. Breaking the habit of gossip is not merely a matter of willpower, of gritting our teeth and vowing to be silent. It is a profound spiritual battle that requires both divine grace and our active cooperation. The first and most powerful weapon in this fight is cultivating a life of prayer and a deep personal relationship with God. When we spend time in silent prayer, in conversation with the one who is love itself, our hearts begin to change. We start to see people not through the lens of our own judgment, but through the compassionate eyes of God. In prayer, we become acutely aware of our own faults and weaknesses. We stand before a holy God and realize our own need for mercy. This experience of humility is the perfect antidote to the pride that fuels gossip. A person who is genuinely aware of their own sinfulness is far less likely to be a harsh judge of others.
They know they live in a glass house, and they are not about to start throwing stones. Saint Faustina's life was a testament to this. Her constant dialogue with Jesus filled her with his mercy, leaving no room for petty judgments of her sisters. The second practical step is to make a conscious and deliberate decision to guard our tongue. The saints call this custody of the tongue. It means thinking before we speak. Before sharing a piece of information about someone, we must ask ourselves a series of questions. Is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? And most importantly, what is my motive for saying this? Am I trying to help the situation, or am I just trying to make myself look good, to entertain, or to hurt someone? If the answer doesn't pass this simple test, then silence is the most charitable and holy response. This also means actively changing the subject when a conversation turns toward gossip. This can be awkward, but it is an act of courage and charity. You can gently redirect the conversation by saying something like, "Well, I don't know enough about that situation to comment, but did you hear about?" Or simply, "Let's talk about something more positive." In doing so, you not only save yourself from sin, but you also protect the person being spoken about and offer a moment of grace to the person who initiated the gossip. You become an agent of peace, not a participant in destruction. A third powerful practice is to cultivate the habit of speaking well of others. Instead of looking for faults, actively look for the good in people and make it a point to praise them, both to their face and behind their back. This is the opposite of detraction. It is the virtue of affirmation. When you hear someone's name mentioned, make it your first instinct to say something positive that you know about them. This practice literally rewires your brain and your soul. It trains you to see the good, to build people up instead of tearing them down. It fills the space that gossip once occupied with words of life and encouragement. And finally, we must harness the power of reparation. What do we do when we fail? Because we will fail. The habit is strong. When you catch yourself having gossiped, do not despair. First, go to God in confession and ask for His mercy. The sacrament of reconciliation is the ultimate spiritual cleansing. Second, if possible and prudent, try to repair the damage. This might mean going to the person you spoke with and saying, "You know, what I said earlier about so-and-so was uncharitable, and I regret it."
This takes immense humility, but it is a powerful way to undo the harm. And third, make acts of reparation. Offer a prayer, a small sacrifice, or an act of kindness specifically for the person you harmed with your words. Pray for them. Ask their guardian angel to protect their reputation. This turns your failure into an opportunity for grace. These are not just nice ideas. They are the spiritual technologies developed over 2,000 years by the saints to combat this specific sin. Saint Faustina's revelation is not meant to leave us in a state of fear and despair, but to awaken us to the seriousness of the issue and propel us toward a life of greater charity. It's a wake-up call from purgatory, a loving warning from a soul who learned the hard way. The choice is now ours. Will we continue to pay the high price of idle words, or will we begin the journey of transforming our speech into a source of healing, grace, and love? Before we conclude, there is one final hopeful message from St. Faustina's diary that we must hear, a message that ties all of this together with the golden thread of divine mercy. The terrifying warning from purgatory, delivered through St. Faustina, is not the final word. The ultimate message of her entire life, the mission given to her by Jesus himself, is that of divine mercy. The 7-year sentence is a stark illustration of God's perfect justice, but it is also a profound testament to the infinite value of God's mercy. That mercy is available to us right here, right now, in this life. The sacrament of confession is a tribunal of mercy, not justice. It is the spiritual fire that can cleanse these sins now, freely and completely, without the agonizing weight of purgatory. The revelation is not meant to paralyze us with fear, but to awaken us with love. It is a call to understand the true power we hold on our tongues every single day.
With our words, we can participate in the work of the accuser, tearing down, dividing, and destroying. Or we can choose to become apostles of mercy, using our words to heal, to unite, to encourage, and to build up the body of Christ. Every conversation is a choice. Every word is a seed that will bear fruit either of bitterness or of life. Saint Faustina learned her lesson in a single, chilling encounter. We have the grace of learning it through her testimony, without having to feel the purifying flames ourselves. This knowledge is a gift, a sacred trust, and it demands a response. This journey into the heart of St. Faustina's diary reveals a truth that is both challenging and liberating. The standards of heaven are higher than we can imagine, but the mercy available to reach them is wider than the oceans. The choice to align our hearts and our words with that mercy is the great work of our lives. It is the path to peace in this world and the direct road to the embrace of God in the next. The question is no longer what she heard, but what we will do now that we have heard it too. Turning Signs into Action, your practical guide. To help you integrate this powerful message into your life, here is a simple, practical guide to begin transforming your words and your heart starting today. In the next 24 hours. First, practice a vow of merciful silence. Make a conscious decision from this moment until this time tomorrow that you will not speak a single negative word about any person who is not present. If you cannot say something kind, necessary, or truly constructive, choose the holy path of silence. This simple fast from negativity will make you acutely aware of your own speech patterns. Second, pray one chaplet of Divine Mercy for a special intention. Offer it for the forgiveness of all the sins of your own tongue throughout your entire life. And extend that prayer to all the souls in purgatory who are suffering for the sin of gossip, especially for anyone you may have personally harmed with your words. Let your prayer be an act of spiritual reparation. In the next 7 days, first, begin a daily speech examination. Each night before you sleep, take just 3 minutes to review your day's conversations.
Ask yourself, were my words today sources of grace or harm? Did I participate in tearing someone down? Did I pass on information I shouldn't have? Did I make a rash judgment? Keep a small journal, just as Faustina did, to note your progress and your failings. This simple habit builds profound self-awareness. Second, undertake an affirmation mission. Every day for the next week, make it your mission to consciously build someone up with your words. Give a sincere compliment to a coworker. Send an encouraging text message to a friend. When you hear someone's name come up in conversation, be the first person to say something positive about them. Actively replace the habit of criticism with the virtue of affirmation. In the next 30 days, first, make a sacramental reset. Prepare for and go to the sacrament of confession within the next month. Make your primary focus the sins of the tongue. Be specific. Tell the priest you have struggled with gossip, detraction, or rash judgment. This act of humility will bring an incredible flood of grace and strength to help you in this spiritual battle. Second, commit to a Charity of the Tongue project. Find a practical way to turn your efforts into a blessing for others. You could create a charity jar, placing a coin in it every time you catch yourself slipping into old habits and donating the money to the poor at the end of the month. Or you could volunteer your time with an organization that serves the lonely or the marginalized, using your voice to bring them comfort and dignity. In the economy of eternity, your words are your currency. Spend them on mercy. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next revelations. Comment what you thought of this video and what city you're watching from. Share this with someone who needs to hear this message.